I'm Madison.
I'm Maria.
I'm Andrea.
I'm Angela.
Our group established some guidelines for writing CVs and resumes that maybe we haven't heard before. First off, differences between CVs and resumes, because the terms get confused a lot. Some countries use these terms interchangeably, and sometimes you'll see a job application where it just says CV/resume, but they're really different, and it's important in academia to know the difference. So a CV is your multi-page document, whereas a resume is only a one-page summary. CV actually stands for curriculum vitae, which is Latin for course of life, whereas resume is French for summary. So that sort of gives you an idea of a CV is something that you just keep adding to, and a resume is something that you tailor to each position to make it fit. So a CV is more used in academia, and a resume is more used in industry. And a CV is more focused on your academic accomplishments, like your educational background, awards, publications, and a resume is more of a picture of the skills you've built through anything from your academics to your extracurriculars and job opportunities.
So this is just an image that lists all the most important differences between a CV and a resume. In general, a resume should be more of a bullet point format, while the CV gives you a chance to talk about yourself. A resume will show things like your work history and accomplishments and can be used for practically any job and will typically be concise, while a CV will show certifications, research affiliations, and is used more for academic, scientific, and medical jobs. A CV is also typically much more detailed and can be several pages long versus a resume, which is generally sticks to one page.
So a quick overview for a resume. These are going to be your short and sweet, one-page max summary of what you have done in the past. So it's really important to make sure that these are very organized. Try not to clutter information. Only use the information that is necessary for the job position that you are going for. 100% you need to have your name and contact information on your resume. Include dates for your education and your past job experiences, and make sure that they are in reverse chronological order. For your references, please make sure that you let them know that they are going to be on your reference. It's going to be a really sticky situation if the person that is your hopefully future employer goes and calls them and they don't know who you are, or if they aren't familiar with what you are trying to do. And it is also a little suggestion to have an objective associated with your resume. For these objectives, there is a personal goal that is outlined at the beginning of your resume in a short and sweet sentence. And it helps guide your resume and focus it to where everything that is in your resume goes and supports that goal that you have already stated that you have for yourself. So when making an objective, you need to ask yourself what it is that you want to get out of the job experience and what you want to contribute to get to that goal.
So, and a really important aspect of resumes is the language that you use. Because it is just one page, you're limited to what can be put on there, and you want to make sure that you're putting important information, but also eye-catching. Most employers will only skim really lightly the resume, and if there's words that they are looking for on there, it's more likely to catch their eyes. The first thing is to use active, not passive language. An example of passive language would be help train new hires on research methods. Helped is really basic and doesn't describe a lot. How did you help? Did you organize it? Did you create it? Did you lead it? Did you do something more in depth than just helped? Because you can say helped and it would just be train someone for 5 minutes. Whereas if you organized it, that might be a little bit more of a bigger accomplishment. So an active phrase that you compared to that would be led professional training on research methods to shorten the learning curve for new hires. It's a little bit longer, but it explains what you might have done a lot more concise. With that, you can also use active verbs / words. These might be a lot more helpful. So when you compare helped to led or created or organized, they help the reader. They give the reader more detail on what you did. So coordinated, executed, developed, depending on what you're talking about. Another thing would be to use numbers versus words. So for words, an example would be you worked on various projects, but that could mean you worked on 2 projects, or you could have worked on 100. And if you worked on a lot more projects, that might be important to the employer because they know that you can handle that magnitude of projects. So an example of a number one would be applied behavioral science research approaches to 30 plus health related projects. That just gives the future employer a better view of what you did. And a tip or suggestion for the language that you're using in each resume is to have a resume that's really basic and just outlines everything that you did. And depending on the employer that you're going to submit it to or the application, you should read the application and its requirements, what they're looking for in a person, and maybe use some of the words that they use in their description of the job in your resume. So that way, if they put it through a computer program, that computer program might catch those words and send it to the hiring manager or whoever's looking at them. And it just can help your chances of being selected as an employee.
So a CV is, of course, different from a resume. So these are the components that should definitely be on every CV. So first of all, your personal information, just like Angela talked about earlier. And then next is an education section. This is always the first part of your CV. And you would include what degree you got, what kind of honors you have, whether that's having graduated from the honors college or some sort of GPA honor, like being cum laude. The time frame, so when you were in school and schools attended, especially if it was multiple, like if you transferred from community college to university. And then only if you feel that it behooves you, you can add your GPA to it if you feel it's above average. And if you complete a senior thesis, you can have its title and a description of the work you did right there in your education section. And then next you'll go into experiences and you separate them into categories. So if you have teaching experience, like being a TA or even being a preceptor, that can be its own category. Research experience with a description of all your projects, and then presentations at conferences and what you presented on, and employment that's relevant to the position you're applying for. And again, with the accomplishments, you separate those into categories as well. So monetary awards like scholarships or grants you've applied for, and publications along with a description of your role. And everyone should have a section for their future research interests. So give a little explanation of the things that you are interested in exploring or maybe have experience with. And then there's some optional things that you can add to your CV that you might want to consider. So if you have unique skills like a lab technique that you've really honed to perfection that not a lot of people know how to do, or if you know any computer programming languages, that's a great thing to list on your CV. Being bilingual or multilingual certainly should go in a special skills section. And any certifications you have, whether it's a teaching certification or a certain science certification for working in labs that you have. Again, how we talked about references, you want to put some contact information for research mentors who are aware that you're using it. And highlight your community involvement. It's good to show that you volunteer. And mention memberships in professional societies. So I have down here just a few examples like the National Science Teachers Association, the American Chemical Society, or Phi Beta Kappa, which is an honor society. All those things can make a CV stand out. There's a few things that you don't want to put on a CV. So an objective statement is something that belongs on a resume, not a CV, because your CV is a very personal document. It doesn't change a whole lot for the position you're applying for. So you don't need an objective statement for a particular position. You don't want to have any photos of yourself or anything else, and don't include things like marital status and age, and don't include irrelevant experiences. So if you're applying for a research technician position or a tenure track position, hopefully in your future, you don't need to say that you have food service experience working at McDonald's if you can't find a way to relate it to the position you're applying for. And on a related note, since we're all in our 20s now, you probably shouldn't have any high school experiences on there unless it's something super unique and outstanding, like winning a national science fair.
Here we have a sample CV. As you can see, this person has all the important sections. Their research interests should match the specific job they're applying to. Their professional experience only includes the relevant research, and their publications include only the most recent ones within 10 years. You should keep in mind, though, that this is definitely a CV used for a faculty position, and so when you make your CV as an undergrad, it won't look the same. Certain sections might differ, or the information might be different, too. This is another example. This person has more pages to their CV. As you can tell, not all the sections are there because As we mentioned before, CVs are usually longer than one page, but here I'm just showing you the one page. Even though your CV might look different, the general idea is still the same. You should have all these sections when you write your CV. Finally, we're just going to talk about some tips for when you're writing your CV. So you should think about the length. Unlike your resume, CVs can be any length, but you should still check for any page limit that a specific job listing might have. So you should keep that in mind. More important than length is structure when writing your CV. You should always place the most important information at the top, and this often includes your education, employment history, and any publications you have. Keep in mind, a personal statement may help make your CV stand out. Some job listing might want you to have a personal statement in there, so it might be something to keep in mind. Within each section, you should list your experience in reverse chronological order, just like in your resume. So as we mentioned before, you should tailor your CV to your audience. For example, think about the university or department you're applying to. You should know whether or not the department has valued publications over teaching when it makes tenure and promotion decisions. You should describe your publications before listing your teaching experience. It's also important to get feedback and ask someone in your field or your department or the department that you're looking to apply to look over your CV, or you can even ask if you could see their CV. Each department and each university will expect slightly different things from a CV. You should also possibly talk to successful people who have been accepted in that program or job listing to see how they structured their CV. You should also keep your CV uncluttered by including ample margins, about an inch on each side, and space for each section so you might include bullet points in some sections, such as when listing courses you taught or took at each university to make your CV easier to read. Also, it's important to use easy to read fonts like Times New Roman and a font size of about 12 point. You should be consistent with whatever format you choose. For example, if you bold one section title, all your section titles should also be bolded. Consistency will make it easy for people to read and follow along with your CV. You also want your CV to show that you're professional and polished, so you shouldn't have any typos or errors in the document. So you should read and proofread many times for spelling and grammar mistakes. You could have, anyone from a professor to a family member or a friend read it over too. It's important just to look over your CV many, many times to make sure that it's all nice and polished.
For our participation part, we're going to ask if you guys can open Kahoot, and we're going to play a little Kahoot.
Perfect. So remember, an objective statement is something that goes on a resume and not a CV.
So as Angela stated, especially in your resume, but also your CV, it should be in reverse chronological order. So your most recent job experience or education should be first, and then you go down the line.
For undergrads, it's really important because you haven't finished your degree. If you've taken any relevant coursework to a lab that you want to get into, it's really important to put that down. So if you want to be in, you're looking at a microbiome lab, you want to put down that you took microbiome, or if you want to go to a biochem lab, it might be important to put you're taking biochem 1 and 2. So for an undergrad or certain courses, you might want to put down on your CV.
Nice, everyone got this right. So the scoreboard. Sarah, congratulations, you're number 1.